Hey, welcome. It is 1 p.m. on Monday, March 25th. We just got the closing bell, and we were expecting a quiet session because of the shortened week, but with some negative bias maybe bouncing towards the end of the day. And we certainly got the quiet day. Today, there's almost no movement on the S&P. You can see that we went sort of the opposite of what we expected. It kind of went up and then just barely moved up, I should say, and then it just chopped sideways for the entire day until finally in the last 15 minutes we started to move downwards. So kind of the opposite of what we were expecting, but overall, really just a super choppy, uneventful sideways trading day. Let's take a look at how it looks on a daily basis. Well, let's quickly, the QQQ, it was up, and then we did get to the second purple line right here, but then we rejected and came all the way back down. So on a daily basis, if we look at the S&P 500, it is still overall a down day. That's a terrible view. Let me scroll. Let me zoom this appropriately. Okay, so it's still a down day because we opened down, we gapped down a little bit, and we basically stayed in place, down 0.27%. But you can see the open and the close are almost the same values. We got the open at 519.8 and the close at 519.82. So basically the exact same level. So very much a sideways movement. So after the previous high or the all-time high on Thursday, basically we're just very slowly drifting down towards the EMA 8. Whether or not we actually get there or this is enough of a pullback, that's a little hard to say on a shortened week like this. Normally we would say, hey, we'll probably make it to the EMA 8, maybe a little bit lower. But since we don't have full participation in the markets, it's hard to say. You can see right here just how low that volume is today. It's way, way, way beneath that average right there. So we're at 32 million. Generally, after the markets, a dark pool action, it all gets tabulated. That's about an additional 10 million of volume. So that would still make us about 42 to 45 million in volume, and our average to that 72 and a half. So just a little over 50% of the average. So that's very, very little. If we got that little on a Monday, and there's no major, I guess there is sort of major news. I guess the consumer confidence tomorrow is somewhat significant, but it being so far down, there's a pretty good chance that for most of the week, if not all week, we will be below the average volume. So we're not going to expect too much action this entire week, seeing how our Monday went. Mostly choppy, or if not choppy, then more likely downward drifting than upward drifting. So we're going to be careful when we enter our positions, or at least be patient when we enter our positions. We're not going to expect to make money right away, or like 1 day move, 2 day move. If we enter a position tomorrow, we're probably going to be holding on to it pretty much all week, waiting for some action to flow into this market. So the market's going to be pretty quiet. The QQQ, you can see that it came all the way down to its EMA 8 and bounced up. So we did get a little bit better action in the QQQ. It is still down 0.36. So just as we were saying, that since we opened significantly downwards in the futures, it was very unlikely that we would be able to recover that entire amount today. So we were likely looking at a overall down day, and we are. So we are down 0.36%. It's a nice green bar right there, though. So there's a reasonable chance that might be it, or we might float down to that EMA 20. Either way, it's not that significant for the QQQ anymore, because we really are just trading inside this box. So what would be significant is if we broke out above this box and we started to get some directionality, but because of the shortened week, that's probably not going to happen this week. If we look at Dow Jones, it started to trade back to this box. So it's testing this box right now. It touched the EMA 8. So we want to watch very carefully if this bounces up off of the top of that box and the EMA 8, or it falls right back into the box. given how the week is starting to look, we're not going to put too much significance into a tiny movement upwards or downwards. So if it moves down to the EMA 20, yeah, it went into the box, but we're not going to get too excited about it. And if it floats up and it challenges the all-time highs, then we're not going to get too excited about it, because for the most part, we're expecting choppy movement throughout this week. So it could just kind of drift sideways like this, up and down, up and down. And if it happens to fall into the box or get near the all-time highs during this choppy sideways up and down movement, it's not going to be significant. We're not going to read too much meaning into it. If we challenge the all-time highs and break through it, that would be definitely significant. If we start to come down towards the MA 50 and break down below it, even though that would be towards the bottom end of our box, then we'll start to really pay attention and see if the Dow Jones might have some continued downward motion. In the small cap stocks, we mostly chopped sideways up a tiny, tiny bit, but you can see that it tried to move up and then it closed all the way down, actually below where we opened. So that's actually a pretty weak sign. Even though we are up on the day, we sort of technically we did bounce off of that EMA 8. That is by no means a confirmation bar or a bar that gives us any sort of confidence. So for now, until I get proven otherwise, unless we get a large green bar or a confirmation green bar where the close and the high are above this previous high, and especially if it's above this high right here on Friday, then we're not going to get too excited. We're just going to count that as chopping in between these two pink lines right here. Let's see what happened in our bonds. Bonds coming back down. So up to that MA 200 and then looking like it's coming back down. So what we said, it was probably going to get contained between this horizontal line and that upper downward sloping line. Right now, it's just getting trapped at that MA 200. So until we have any sort of stimulus, we're probably not going to get too much action. That stimulus may come in the form of the consumer confidence tomorrow, but it's more likely going to come on Thursday with the GDP report. Let's take a look at our dollar. Dollar just pulling back a little bit, not giving us too much information right there. Let's look at our VIX. VIX got a little excited during the day, but came right back down. So not too significantly above where we were on Friday. What's interesting is that we got that downward motion on Friday, but not an associated move upward in VIX. But today we are a tiny bit up, and our VIX, or actually we're down, tiny bit down, and our VIX is a tiny bit up. That makes sense. But this move all the way up to 13.7, 13.67, that is a little surprising, because for the most part we just chopped sideways throughout the day. So for our VIX to move that much, it may have been some market maker somewhere might have gotten a little jittery, but then calmed back down. So this week, even if we get chopping sideways, we're going to want to watch this VIX pretty carefully, because it could start to indicate some nervousness in the market, even if we only see choppiness in price action. If the VIX starts to act up, then we're going to start to be a little bit more cautious and choose our sectors very carefully. So let's take a look at our sectors. Let's see what performed today. Energy and utilities. And we were talking about, I think, both of these in the morning. For sure, we were talking about utilities. So utilities is doing well. So my original view over the weekend still looks good on utilities. And for energies, towards the bottom, we've got retail, industrials, home builders, tech. And I want to see where communications, middle of the road, but down. And where's my SMH? Up here, up a tiny bit to 0.18. So really the only ones that are up are kind of gold, and energy. So really XLU and energy. Let's take a look at those two. XLU. Yeah, XLU is starting to look pretty good. We broke above the MA200. We pulled back and tested it and bounced off of it. We're heading higher. We're starting to approach these highs right here. If we can get beyond them this week or early next week, then utilities will be looking very good. XLE. XLE is very strong. Very, very strong. We are up here at our +3 Keltner channel and we're just following it up. That can happen. That can stay that way for a few weeks before it pulls back down into the 2 or 1 Keltner channel, or it might go parabolic and break above the Keltner channel, the 3rd Keltner channel, and then we would expect it to pull back down at least to the +1 Keltner channel. But for now, it can sustain this linear upward motion for at least another week or two, maybe even 3 or 4 weeks. So XLE is looking pretty good. Some opportunities. It'd be a great sector to look for opportunities, XLE. Okay, I like it, but I prefer a little bit more confirmation in it before we start to put money to work in XLU. Let's see what other sectors look good. That's weird. Why did I guess it got reloaded. On a longer term basis, we still got home builders, semiconductors, communications, and tech at the top, retail. This is looking really good. These sectors are all aligned right there. All of those, that's looking really good. I got F and E pretty far apart though. I got I and B technically together because the Dow Jones, gold, and ITA are not official sectors. So technically these are right next to each other. So that's really good. So for this to be a real bullish market, I would need IWM to be towards the top. I would need QQQ. Oh, QQQ is there. I've got discretionary. That should be towards the top as well. And then V and B, that's okay. Or V and RE. And Q and P. This is almost aligned. It's almost unfragmented on a longer term basis. However, the ones that are fragmented are really off. Like this XLY is really far off from where it should be, and the XLE is far off from where it should be. So either F has got to drop really far or E has got to come back up. And based on what we just saw in E, that's more likely that E is going to come back up. On a shorter term basis, let's look at the 3-month. We're all over the place on a 3-month basis. Everything's all jumbled up. On a 1-month basis, everything's all jumbled up. So, but at least on a longer term basis, things are looking decent. You just need energy to move upwards. That's the main, and discretionary to move upwards. Let's say XLY. Yeah, XLY is just chopping sideways, maybe somewhat bullish, but not very strong at all. So it looks like there's probably still some sector rotation going. On a longer term basis, we can start to anticipate an uptrend, but we're not ready to start that strong uptrend yet. I mean, technically we are already in an uptrend, but it's not that strong. And so sectors are rotating throughout this, which is making it just kind of creep up, or we get these longer periods of consolidation right here. So when I start to see on a shorter term basis those sectors align, then I'll believe in a strong movement upwards. But for now, we're probably going to get caught sideways. This week, we're probably going to get caught sideways. And then next week, we'll see maybe our sectors will align and we can start moving upwards. So for now, based on what I'm seeing, we have this choppiness going forward for this week because of the shortened week. So the best strategies that I personally will be adopting in my portfolios is either overnight trades. I'm well, depending on your portfolio, how it's structured. But for my own personal portfolios, I would be in late afternoon, out the next morning. Those would be acceptable trades. Or I'm in at the open and then I'm out the next day open. So I capture a full session and overnight that way. Then those would be acceptable. But I don't want to be hanging on to ones that were 2 or 3 or 4 day trades, because if I'm going to expect it to chop just up and down sideways throughout the week, then the entire life of that trade, my price movement is going to be predominantly sideways motion, and I'm just losing out on time value while my price stays in a small range. So if we are going to allocate and go into trades this week, then we only want to hold them for 1 day, because we could get a 1 day pop, a 1 day move, or an overnight move, or we want to try to go for a little bit longer. So 1% extrinsic value style, maybe 1 month type of holds or 2 or 3 week type of holds. So for now, it's given how volume was super low, we're going to expect everything to just stay quiet for the rest of this week. Let's see where did our volume did get refreshed. Okay. So let's reload this again. Not only did our volume get refreshed, but our last bar turned red instead of green. So 519.8 at the open, 519.77 at the close. So we moved down 5 cents for the official close, and our volume is up to 43.77 million instead of, I believe it was around 32 million earlier. So that 10 million-ish in volume, in additional volume that I was talking about, we actually got it. So we are roughly halfway, only half of our average volume over the last 50 days. So definitely a quiet session, and we're going to expect that quietness to continue throughout the week. All right, so we have a good idea of how we're going to position ourselves this week. Basically, we're either going to sit and wait on the sidelines, or we're going to look for those longer term 2 to 3 to 4 week trades, or just overnight trades. So that's it for today. We're probably not going to have too much to talk about tomorrow, unless the consumer confidence, unless the consumer confidence gives us a little bit of volatility tomorrow. Otherwise, we're just going to expect another quiet day and another quiet day on Wednesday, and maybe an interesting day on Thursday with the GDP report coming out and it being the last day, a trading day of the week, which makes it a little bit of oddball day as well. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you tomorrow morning.